So I want to talk about stillness versus disruption or muddle, confusion, upset. This picture I have as my background image today. I chose purposefully. I took this picture. It is on the Point St. Charles side of Lachine Canal in Montreal. What you're seeing are apartment buildings right beside the Atwater Market in the Griffintown part of Montreal. The water that day, it was a summer day and the water wasn't moving at all. Like, look at that reflection. I mean, the way this is sort of altered for a background image, it almost looks like some sort of a painting, and how perfectly reflected. It's like near perfect reflection of the actual building on top versus what's below. That's how still, perfectly calm and transparent the water was. Transparent, meaning we can actually see through with clarity to the depths. If, the water isn't like completely very dark water with black rocks or soot at the bottom of the lake or the canal. In this case, you can see through, and you could see through. As I went to the water's edge, you can see through to the bottom and see the rocks and see the vegetation that's growing in the water and such. A long-winded way to say right now, that's not my life. That still water is what I'm constantly aiming for, whether it be still waters in the sense of equanimity, peace of mind, mental calmness, the ability to look at a situation and really try and understand it and assess it and recognize it for what it is, and then to respond to it in a meaningful, thoughtful way, in an emotional way that is like uplifting and empowering, using preferred emotions and feelings in how I approach the problem. So I've been off my game, it seems. But then I realized it's not a game and it's not a fixed path. So I want to share a few quotes and thoughts from the Tao Te Ching. So the first one is the what's considered the first chapter. A way can be a guide, but not a fixed path. Names can be given, but not permanent labels. So the way, the Tao Te Ching, Tao means the way, but it means the way in a very broad perspective. It could mean the way like a path, but the way of life, the way we create meaning in our lives, the way we seek trying to understand and show up in a way that is in alignment with our own personal responsibility and how we interact with others and make decisions that may have an impact or an influence on the collective good. And I mentioned this last part because what I'm most interested in is this intersection between morality and ethics, not a definitive right wrong. Binaries are very limiting, and we use right, wrong, up, down as extreme ways of describing things. And this comes back to the second line I just read. Names can be given, but not permanent labels. So what we say is good has a host of other definitions within the realm of good as a description, and what we say is bad has a host of other words that we can use to describe that which is bad. It could be bad in I don't feel well. This feeling makes me feel bad. That person is bad in nature. Or in popular music, Michael Jackson popularized bad, which actually meant good, meaning he's so good, he's bad. Or she's so good, she's bad. Confusing, isn't it? But definitions are by nature, at least we think, supposed to provide what's behind me, this absolute clarity, this reflection of what it is we are trying to describe in the world, what it is we are trying to communicate with others. So let's hold that thought for a second. This was a near perfect reflection of the reality or the truth of this standing apartment condominium building on the ground that is real, that is there. On this one rare day, there was maybe 2 or 3 days that I saw in the morning in the summer where it was this quiet, this peaceful, and the water was this still. But it's still not a 100% accurate reflection of reality. So this, at least for me trying to understand what I'm going through, what maybe you're going through, is that these moments of clarity, of stillness, of understanding what's happening in the world are very rare, right? So if this reflection is an understanding of what's happening in the world, the real building, the reflection of what's happening in the world, the real building, could this be a reason why right now everyone is so angry and upset and frustrated or anxious or shutting down and being quiet? I have found myself not knowing what to say. And holy crap, I have a lot of things that I could say. I have so many handwritten journals. I have so many unpublished essays. I have so many ideas written down in notes. I have a digital journal as well as a handwritten journal. I have books that I was working on that I never published. Some of them are when I was doing health and fitness, so I don't care. I'm never going to publish those things anymore. I was starting to write a book on LGBTQ leadership, how to lead with queer integrity, and I stalled. And I'm still not 100% clear as to why. I was trying to get the discernment about what wasn't happening for me. The ideas I have, the principles and the practices that I could share in a coaching perspective or in helping someone understand how to lead, how to take personal responsibility, how to show up and make a meaningful, thoughtful, respectful difference in the world for our collective humanity, for the collective good, is solid. But I started second guessing myself. It's like, has somebody already said this? Is this repetitious? Is this really helpful? Is someone going to care when they read this? And maybe part of the problem was that the picture itself was so big that I was trying to focus on the full reflection as opposed to like maybe picking just one of the windows up here and going, let's fill in that space. Let's try and construct that window before we go to the second floor and the third floor, and like literally like building a house, building anything. It's every single step along the way. But then there's also the way in which we do things. So I was dictating, so speech to text. That just didn't feel right. Then I was trying to handwrite. And maybe I need to use the computer again. But I was going through a period where I was so frustrated that I learned a little bit of typing, but I never completed learning typing. And so my my fingers get spastic. And it's literally like, what is this gibberish on the screen? Why are there so many mistakes? And at least with my mind and how it works, when I see a mistake on the screen or I see a little underline from like my Grammarly or whatever spell check, which tells me I should turn these things off when I'm working on a draft, it immediately stops me in my tracks. It is like that ripple across the water, the wind blowing across, the current moving through, and I can't see the reflection of what it is that I've just taken from my mind and put down onto paper or put down on the screen. All I can see is the obstacle in the path. So how are you feeling right now in the world with what you're trying to deal with how you're trying to manage and lead yourself and show up, I hope, in a way that, inspires others to make a difference. It is really hard to be this perfect, pointing at myself, to be this perfect of a reflection of what your ideal is. A conversation with a friend of mine this week, kind of like, I don't need to complain to you. I just wanted to talk through some of these challenges that I'm talking about right here. And he said, sometimes you show up like all perfect, like great lighting, you know how to do a video, you know how to do the sound, you're prepared, but where's the real Darren in that? And I mentioned that I have struggled with anger and rage and frustration for most of my life. It's a part of who I am, and it's probably why I very much went into coaching. It's probably why I've spent a lot of time reading books like the Tao Te Ching to look at the way of self-mastery and finding equanimity to the best of my ability so that I won't show up as an angry, combative, contentious Darren all of the time. And earlier this year, February or something like that, when the Orange Menace was reelected in the United States, I was losing it. I was scared. And I was deeply worried. And I was looking back at articles I had written years earlier in his first presidency. And I was reading what other people were writing, and I was looking at what is possible to come. And I felt that this was what was going to happen. And it is what is happening today in December of 2025 and for the last couple of months. In my opinion, the unfairness, the increasing polarization, the injustice, the inhumanity, the disrespect that is happening in the world. And when I say all of those things, this is what is upsetting. This is what is making it so difficult to know what to do. And I applaud those individuals I follow who are advocates and activists and are unafraid and unapologetic to show up in these toughest of times. At the same time, I recognize we all need to be more vulnerable. That yes, sometimes we can swear and get angry and express our rage, but any kind of a rant, any kind of a rage expression without pulling it back and offering some way forward, even if it's a question, even if it's a provocation in the form of making you think, is just somebody showing up to complain, right? If you're just showing up to shout about something, it's kind of a virtue signaling in the way, saying, hey, I'm as angry about this fucking problem as everybody else is, and I'm trying to put myself on the right side of history or the right side of morality or the right side of ethics so that you'll know that I'm a good person. But if you don't offer a way that can be a guide, but not a fixed path, is that helping? And here's the thing, a way can be a guide, but not a fixed path, means it's not an ideology. It's not dogma. And that's what I'm working against, is what I see in the world that's ideological, dogmatic, rigid, fixed, unyielding, inflexible, inhumane, lacking humility, devoid of compassion or love or caring or inclusion or acceptance for others. And that is worth standing up and fighting for. That is worth stepping back, maybe, to find this kind of clarity and equanimity, which is what I think I'm trying to do right now, is to get a little bit more rooted, a little bit more grounded, to see to the depths so that I can make some steps forward on my path and then check in again and course correct. And I wrote a few things down that I want to share that are relative to this. Sometimes we need to be vague before we can get specific or before we can get clear. We have to mess things up sometimes. We have to stir the pot before it can settle. Just like the Lachine Canal behind me on a windy day when it's raining and everything is moving across. Everybody wants to get back inside to where it's warm and comfortable and calm. But when it's like this on the outside in the real world, we want to be outside in it. We want to take part in it. We want to enjoy it. Sometimes saying less allows us to understand more. Here I am at 16 minutes into this video. If we try to explain away everything, it can cause a lot of confusion. If we try and justify every single word choice, it can cause confusion. That's not saying one thing is right and one thing is wrong. It just means that sometimes saying less allows you, when you hear something someone has said or read something someone has said, a pithy statement, a poetic approach to a problem, meaning an awkward grammar or syntax or lacking of punctuation, and you're like, what is being said here? That is a moment to try and discern on your own the clarity and the reflection of what the person is trying to present to you, so that you can think through calmly to get to that state of clarity, of understanding, but for yourself. So my invitation at the end of this video is that there doesn't always have to be a conclusion in the moment. A conclusion in the moment would mean, yay, we found the answer to everything. The problem is solved. It's not going to be the case. Most importantly, if what I have said speaks to you and you're finding yourself in a similar space to what I've been struggling with, trying to find this kind of clarity behind me in the image, and you don't know how to do it on your own, then message me. Let's have a conversation. Let's work through the steps to figure out where you're at right now. What's that obstacle in your way, like that little red underline in the text when you're writing a document that says, oh, your grammar is wrong, or your spelling is wrong, or you should put a comma here, that just stops you in your tracks from making the progress that you know you can make. Message me. Let's have a conversation. Let's figure out how you can get to this point of clarity so that you can create the way that's going to be your guide, but not a fixed path.